Christ reigns in such a way that the emperor who persecutes Luther for the Pope is forced to destroy the Pope for Luther. This video is a complement to Sand Roman History's video on the same topic. Check it out. It's February 1528. As smoke rises from the smoldering ruins of Rome, the immediate consequences can easily be seen. The Pope has been humbled. Rome's population of 50,000 is reduced to 10,000. The city's booming economy that ran on church taxes is reduced to zero. Among the refugees are Michelangelo and Gian Pietro Caraffa, a future pope. Rome was the cultural and political center of Italy for decades. Now this is no more. The reactions to the sack of Rome vary from pathetic to ironic. Italians weep in the streets, even in far-off places, as a sense of fear and resentment overcomes the land. Further north, the humanist Erasmus grieves, but also adds that this event must have been divine punishment for the corruption of the Church. Luther is more sardonic. He muses on the perverse absurdity of Protestant Germans being paid by the Emperor to destroy the Pope. The Emperor himself is deeply regretful, sending his hopes and prayers to the people of Rome. However, some doubt his honesty, most notably Francis I, who is already speculating on how he could use the events to further his goals. The man who lost the most, Pope Clement VII, is too sad to even mourn. Instead, he resigns himself to the new reality of his situation. Before the sack, the Papal States were one of the foremost powers in Italy. After Naples and Milan were conquered and Venice humbled at Agnadello, the Papal States represented Italy's hope for independence. Popes have acted as secular princes for decades, but Clement pushed his luck a bit too far. Now he is powerless and must do the Emperor's bidding. First on order is Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon. Henry is not likely to produce an heir with the aging Catherine, so he absolutely needs a divorce to avoid a potential civil war. But there is a problem. Catherine is Charles V's aunt. The request is denied, and as a result, Henry rage quits the Catholic Church. Next, the Emperor lays his eyes on the bishopric of Utrecht. Clement has no choice but to let him have it. The two men meet in 1530, and Clement has to crown Charles Holy Roman Emperor amid much pomp and ceremony. But the Emperor is not unreasonable. He restores the Medici to Florence and allows them to marry into the imperial family. Clement, who is also a Medici, is completely in his pocket now. But nonetheless, there is one issue Clement won't budge on. Charles wants the Pope to convene a religious council where the reform of the Church would be discussed with the ultimate goal of achieving a compromise between Catholics and Protestants. Then, with the papacy and all of Christendom at his back, Charles V would finally be able to launch a massive crusade, sweeping the Ottomans from Europe and North Africa. At least that would be the plan. But there is one thing that scares Clement even more than the Turk or the Emperor, and that is a religious council. In the 15th century, the papacy had been plagued by the conciliar movement, leading to the near ruin of the Catholic Church and papal authority. Clement is adamant this cannot happen again. But Clement dies in 1534, allowing a reformist candidate more to the liking of Charles to be elected. Like all self-respecting Italian magnates of the time, Paul III also hates the Emperor and his Spanish advisors, even though Charles tries to placate him. He allows the Pope to elect his 15-year-old grandson Cardinal, and even permits his degenerate son Pierluigi to govern Parma and Piacenza for a time. All of this, however, is immaterial, since the Papal States can no longer act as a secular power, and Italy is firmly under imperial Spanish control. Paul knows that the only way to get back any semblance of power is to strengthen and reinforce the Church. The loss of secular power has to be offset by a gain in moral superiority and prestige. To this end, Paul begins an energetic reform of the Church. Past forms of corruption, like the sale of indulgences, absenteeism, nepotism and simony, will no longer be tolerated. Luther's heresy that Clement completely ignored is now the number one issue. Tentatively, greater and greater church councils are convened, until finally the mother of all church conventions, the Council of Trent, is convoked in 1545. Contrary to Charles's original vision of finding a compromise, the council turns out to be rather hawkish, reaffirming religious doctrine and popish orthodoxy. The council further alienates Protestants and lays the groundwork for the Catholic Counter-Reformation and 100 years of devastating religious wars. As it turns out, Luther's irony was unwarranted. As a result of his defeat and humiliation, the Church goes into overdrive, presenting such a united and determined front that Luther could hardly have fathomed. This orthodoxy and doctrinaire thinking is also carried over to Italy. In 1540, the militant order of the Jesuits is created. The Jesuits focus especially on education and on becoming confessors to powerful people. Soon they infiltrate all higher education and most of the princely courts. In 1542, the Italian Inquisition is founded, modeling itself on the Spanish Inquisition, meant to root out all heterodox thinking. Finally, in 1559, the Index of Forbidden Books is published as a reaction to the proliferation of printing. As a result, the intellectual sphere in Italy becomes rather narrow and regressive. Most artists who fled Rome returned there once things settled down. However, art will never be like it was before. The original Italian Renaissance had strong pagan influences taken directly from Greek and Roman antiquity. These innovations will continue as far as style is concerned. However, concerning subject matter, Italian art will be more akin to its former self, serving as an accessory to religion rather than as a form of individual expression. Thus, Renaissance gives way to Mannerism, that gives way to Baroque, expressing tastes of a more conservative and more Spanish Italy. While we cannot definitely say that the sack of Rome of 1527 was the turning point or the most important component in these changes in Italy and across Europe, we can argue that it was indispensable in a number of ways. For the Emperor and later Spain to achieve complete dominance over Italy, the Pope and the Papal States had to be crushed. Also, for the Church, dominated by Italians, to finally take Protestantism seriously, there needed to be a shock. Germans had to pay a visit to Rome to awaken Italians from their luxurious complacency. As far as art goes, the transition from Renaissance to Baroque was only natural, as art always reflects reality. The sack of Rome lived on vividly in people's imaginations for generations to come, eventually being overshadowed by such abominations as the sack of Antwerp or the sack of Magdeburg. Thus, history went on, but the events were not forgotten. If you would like to know more about this age, please refer to my other documentaries on the Italian Wars, the Renaissance and the Protestant Reformation.